And to talk more about that story, we are joined by Dr. S. Samuel C. Rajiv, who's a research fellow at the IDSA. Thank you, Dr. Samuel, for joining us. Both Netanyahu and Joe Biden have made rhetorical statements saying that we will hit back. Netanyahu going on saying that, Biden saying those who have committed for this crime will pay for it. Netanyahu says that we will not leave them. Is it mere rhetoric, aimed at domestic audience, or could we see some kind of retribution?
Yes, Mr. Singh, thank you for having me. I think this is a recent development has been, sort of put the spanner in the works in terms of a hostage deal, which was being very robustly negotiated by the Americans along with the Qataris and the Egyptians. As all of us are aware, President Biden had put forward a three-phase, ceasefire deal in end May 2024 that required the end to hostilities and release of hostages in phases, with ending with the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Since May, there have been many rounds of negotiations, but obviously Israel has also upped the ante. It has taken out most of the Hamas senior leadership, but they're not able to get at Yahya Sinwar, who was purportedly the main mastermind behind the October 7, 2023 ghastly terrorist attacks. So I think going forward, I think it remains to be seen how both sides will, react to this latest development. The hostage negotiations right now, it'll be it'll be definitely impacted because of this latest development, because Prime Minister Netanyahu is accusing the Hamas of not being in a position to accept this, hostage deal, ceasefire deal.
Exactly. Netanyahu says whoever murders hostages does not want a deal. So the question is, does this development, does this killing of hostages at this stage put the deal, the already elusive deal, in jeopardy?
I think because I think it's important to note that Israel has been, mounting raids in the Gaza Strip to get these hostages out. Latest reports say there are about more than 100 of them still, in captivity. But even among this 100, at least one-third of them, Israel admits are actually dead. So Israel has in fact mounted some raids to get back some of these dead bodies also. So essentially, there are about 70 odd living hostages. And most of the Hamas infrastructure has been destroyed. Most of the Hamas leadership is dead, except Yahya Sinwar and a few others. So, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has always stated that the goal of this military operation, the Israeli military operation in the Gaza Strip, is the total destruction of the Hamas. He's termed it that Israel is pursuing what is termed as a total victory. But President Biden and others have said that this is a vague term. This is not it can't be defined in very concrete terms. So there has to be an end to hostilities, but the Israeli leadership has been insisting that the hostages have to be brought out from the Gaza Strip. So I think this is 11 months now into this bloody war. Thousands of people have been dead. The war is now expanded. There is a lot of to Israel's northern borders also. Recently, there were rockets exchanged. More than 100 Israeli aircraft, undertook a mission inside Lebanon to take out the Hezbollah rocket launch pads.
No, that's right. May I stop you here, Dr. Samuel? My question is that
Yeah.
does it put pressure on Netanyahu now to act further? And why would the Hamas be doing it at this critical juncture? Does it give them any negotiating edge? Because they could have hoped that perhaps he would, Netanyahu would buckle under pressure and say, okay, give me the hostages, I'll give you a ceasefire. How could it play out? Could Netanyahu now even further harden his position and put the deal in a jeopardy?
So I think military objectives, I think, are very limited, except the hostages. There's not much that the IDF can now achieve, in the Gaza Strip, because the Gaza Strip is a rubble now. The entire underground, the tunnels infrastructure has also been destroyed. Most of the leadership of Hamas has been killed. So I think this seems to me like a blip, because these were, hostages who were, reportedly killed before they were rescued. So, but the Hamas has been saying that these hostages have been killed as a result of the Israeli air raids and Israeli attacks. So we don't know for sure that how these people have been killed. Recently, there was a live hostage who was rescued, a Bedouin hostage who was rescued, and a week before, and 10 days before, there were again bodies were recovered. So I think going forward, I think this is the only leverage that the hostages are the only people who are, the Israelis are saying these are the people that we want back. These are our people. They've been, captured, in a terrorist attack on our country. So unless we get these hostages back, the Israeli Prime Minister and his leadership have been saying we will not stop the IDF operation inside the Gaza Strip. So, but then these hostages are the only leverage for the Hamas. So, to the extent that they can hold on to, and really a deal that, in the hope of a deal that it's acceptable to them, because it's important to note the Hamas
Okay.
saying there has to be a total cessation of hostilities. But the Israelis are saying we won't reduce the hostility. Sorry,
We wouldn't
stop
stop we
the
wouldn't
military
ceasefire
operation.
unless you
The
agree to the
hostages.
deal on our terms. Okay,
Yes, yes.
so both sides are playing their cards, seeing how they can best get a deal to their favor. Let's talk about Netanyahu. For him, what does this mean? It puts him in a tough spot, really, because now the families of the hostages, remaining hostages, have further intensified their campaign, saying, "Oh, Netanyahu failed us." In fact, I was just reading Yoav Gallant's statement, the Minister of Defense's statement. He says the cabinet must gather immediately and reverse the decision made on Thursday. It's too late for the hostages who were murdered in cold blood. We must get back the hostages that are still being held by Hamas. So clearly, there are divisions emerging within the parliament, within the war cabinet of Netanyahu. He fighting with his security chiefs. They having different views on how the deal should go.
You're absolutely right. I think this, if you look at it in that perspective, I think this development actually puts Netanyahu on the back foot, because there is a lot of public anger that the charge that the prime minister is pursuing a war at the expense of Israeli citizens who are there, still being held hostage. So, and you've pointed out the statements of his war cabinet, members. So I think this will really place the burden on Netanyahu to agree to the terms of the Hamas. But the point to note here is Prime Minister Netanyahu has accepted the terms of the ceasefire deal. The President Biden's ceasefire agreement, the May 31st, 2024 agreement, Prime Minister Netanyahu has accepted that. The Hamas has not accepted that. The UN Security Council has accepted President Biden's proposal in a resolution it passed on July 10th. So it's essentially, and there was many negotiations which have been held subsequent to these developments. But the Hamas has not been on board. Hamas has been, insisting that there has to be a complete stop to Israeli hostilities. And even recently now there is some report which saying that the terms of the deal have been further refined, with Prime Minister Netanyahu insisting that there has to be some sort of screening of those Palestinians who've been displaced from the northern Gaza Strip. For them to return, he wants a screening mechanism. And there is also an argument about Israeli military presence on the what is termed as the Philadelphia corridor with the border with Egypt. Prime Minister Netanyahu says this corridor has to have an Israeli military presence, because again, if Israelis are not there, then that will be used to smuggle weapons, and then in the future again could lead to attacks on Israel. So these are some of the sticking points. But it remains to be seen how things pan out. But both sides are now on the back foot, obviously, because it's been 11 months now. But an essential point to note is the Israelis are, not able to, get relevant military targets now. They've bombed more than 60,000 targets in the Gaza Strip. Almost all the Hamas leadership is wiped out. So I think it's a waiting game. As Secretary of State Blinken was pointing out, time is of the essence because otherwise even the remaining hostages will be dead.
Okay. So the safety of the hostages is at stake. Is
Yeah.
it really possible to decimate the Hamas as Netanyahu claims his military objective is?
Yes, that's a very important point because this is an organization that is a part of the population, and which has been, quotes within quotes occupied for so many decades. So and it's very difficult, to remove each and every radical member of an organization which feels they've been discriminated against, they've been ruled against their wishes. So I think the point being, as the war, stands at this current juncture, in 11 months, most of the Hamas's overground infrastructure has been decimated. The underground infrastructure has also been largely decimated. So I think Hamas as an organization is essentially almost non-existent, except the leadership, and Yahya Sinwar has still not been captured. So I think the point to note here is Sinwar's capture is actually, if you look at it that way, is what is holding back a hostage deal. If Yahya Sinwar is killed or is captured, I think within the next few minutes you'll have a hostage deal. So and even the Americans are apparently helping the Israelis in trying to track down Sinwar. So if he is captured, I think that will now I think put an end to to the fighting.
All right. Um, why would Joe Biden make that statement saying that we will, those who committed this crime will have to pay for it? Was it because Goldberg, Polin, if that's the name of the Israeli Americans, his parents, addressed the DNC there? So is he looking just at his domestic constituency? Secondly, what does it mean for American elections with Trump already saying, well, these people couldn't get a deal, these people couldn't stop the war?
Yes, I think that's a very important, foreign policy, issue domestically for the Americans also, especially now that an American citizen has been killed. A few months ago, in fact, the parents of this hostage, Mr. Goldberg, Polin, put out a video, and there was a lot of media attention to that video. Uh, they was trying to put pressure on the Israeli government to help secure Israelis. But now that he's been killed, it's obviously a lot of domestic repercussions. The Republicans are going to use it in their campaign efforts against the Democrats because this is obviously they'll portray this as a negative foreign policy event for the Democratic administration. So I think because of the American citizen was involved, and also there was a Russian citizen who was involved, who was killed. There was a Russian citizen, Russian Israeli citizen who was part of the six people who were killed. So, but mostly I think now it's a lot of women and children also. That at least one third of them are women and children and non-combatants. There are some Israeli soldiers also a part of the hostages. So I think it's a tricky situation. But as I pointed out, I think Israel want to get back at the person who's responsible for this attack, and they hold Yahya Sinwar, squarely responsible. So and to the extent that I'm not sure if there are any other hostages of other nationalities involved. If there are, I think then there'll be a bigger headache for the administration of President Joe Biden also because that will be a negative, seen as a negative foreign policy effort on their part.
Right. Yahya Sinwar, you say, is what the prize catch, the most sought after man for both the Americans and the Israelis, more so for the Israelis because they are fighting the war really. But nobody knows where Yahya Sinwar is. They don't even know whether he's in the strip or is he out of the strip.
Yes. So the Israelis have killed his deputy, Mohammed Daif,
Hmm.
recently.
Hmm.
They have killed most of the Hamas leadership. You could be right. He's perhaps gone out of the strip also, but the only way he could go out was through the Egypt border. But then the Egyptians will be aware of where he is. The
Hmm.
Egyptian intelligence chief is part of the, ceasefire negotiations along with
Hmm.
the Prime Minister of Qatar and Secretary of State Blinken. So I think because there is no, I think the only face-saving formula, it remains to be seen, especially and even now, after so many thousands have been killed. It's difficult for us to say this, but it looks like the Israelis are and the Americans are will reinforce their efforts to get at Sinwar, and once they get him, so I think it looks like there could be
That's an
some.
interesting point that you make, Dr. Samuel, because that the Egyptians would know.
Yeah.
Because the only way, if he's already escaped the script, is through those underground tunnels that connect into Egypt, that open up into Egypt. So the Egyptians would know. The question then is, would the Egyptians be amenable to handing him over or giving leads to his whereabouts to the Americans or the Israelis?
Yes, I think they will be amenable if the terms of the ceasefire deal is as per their interest. Israelis also want to occupy the Gaza Strip, but the Americans themselves have very explicitly stated that they're totally opposed to the permanent occupation of the Gaza Strip by Israelis. So that's one absolute no for the Americans and for the Egyptians also. And remember, we should note that the Israelis came out of the Gaza Strip in 2005, and after they came out, it's because of the linkage with the Gaza Strip with the Sinai border that Hamas was able to replenish itself with offensive weapons with which it sort of mounted attacks on Israel. So the Israelis are insisting that they will have some control over the Gaza-Egypt border. So, but as you have pointed out, so unless if the terms of the deal are amenable to the Egyptians and to the Qataris through and to the Hamas, obviously, because the Egyptians and the Qataris are in touch with the Hamas. So then I think going forward, Sinwar can, he's actually a pawn in the game. So if you look at it that way, yeah.
But say, hypothetically, assuming Sinwar falls, what happens to Hamas? What is the future of Hamas? You say, most of its top leadership has been eliminated. Who's running the Al Qasim Brigade then?
So, it's the Israelis have this policy of of targeted killings, and there've been anybody. So before Sinwar, there was somebody else, and before some, so they taken out, for instance, the head of the Hamas, the founder of Hamas, who was in a wheelchair. He was coming out of Friday prayers. He was over 90 years old. So they've taken out all these high value targets over the years, but people have been filling up their places. But now I think the amount of destruction, the massive amount of destruction in the Gaza Strip, thousands of people have been killed. So I think it's very difficult for Hamas, and also you should note that Hamas was a terrorist organization which had the entire population of Gaza as hostages. So it had in fact it overthrew a democratically elected Palestinian National Authority government in 2005 on the elections 2007, and then it took over the strip. So the population of Gaza itself was a hostage to the Hamas's activities. So now that most of the leadership has
Really?
been dead.
But hadn't the Hamas won the elections?
Yes, but it won the elections, defeating the Palestinian
The,
National
the
Authority.
Fatah, the Fatah,
The Fatah,
defeating the
yes.
Fatah.
Yeah, yes, but the problem being, it is now after this October 7, 2023 attacks, it'll be very difficult for the Hamas now to get public support from the Gaza population because of the massive amount of destruction, massive loss of lives. No, they will surely the Gaza population will surely not allow Hamas to function as prior to October 7, 2023. Perhaps other militant organizations will take the Hamas's place because obviously this is complex conflict with Israel that Palestinians believe can only be won through the gun, because the two-state solution is going nowhere. So obviously there will be some other perhaps entities which will take over the Hamas. But then now, after so much has happened in the past 11 months, it's inconceivable to think that Israelis and the Palestinians will not have to be will not do something to go forward on negotiations for some sort of a deal. Perhaps a two-state solution is too far away, but some sort of administrative control and even security control for the Palestinians. And in fact, the UN Security Council resolution that was passed in the aftermath of President Biden's ceasefire proposal explicitly notes that the Gaza Strip and the West Bank have to be, geographically, linked
Brought it
together.
into continuity with the West Bank.
Yes, so that is an essential part of any proposal that will have to take care of the Palestinian needs going forward, because otherwise these two strips, strips of land with Palestinians on them, with Israel in the middle, this is untenable for the Palestinians. So I think there could be a lot of permutations and combinations going forward, but all we can hope is, after so much of death and destruction, there has to be some forward movement in terms of the political issues that have bedeviled this the Palestinian cause for so many decades.
Okay. All right. My last question before I let go of you, Dr. Samuel. What happens to the vaccination drive which began today? Do you think that will continue?
Yes, Mr. Singh. I think that should continue, and both sides have agreed to this. Because the health emergency, there was some case, I think, that was detected. So going forward, hopefully this kind of pauses will be used to increase the humanitarian aid that can reach the people of Gaza also.
All right. We'll leave it there. Many thanks, Dr. Samuel, Samuel C. Rajiv, for joining us and lending us your insights on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.